Welcome everyone to Roll into 2019 Smoothly with Payroll Relief Year-End Webinar. I'm Carlos Garcia, Product Manager for Payroll Applications here at Accountants World, and your host for this webinar. This webinar broadcasts audio over PC speakers, or you may use our teleconferencing number that you obtained when you first signed in. So what are we going to be discussing today? We're going to streamline process to make the year-end and early 2019 go smoother for payroll processors using Payroll Relief. For most of us, year-end process is pretty standard. You close out the old year and start the new year. We've been doing this for several years. What this webinar will cover is the processes and tools available in Payroll Relief that will greatly assist you in performing year-end tasks efficiently and accurately. Closing out the year, we will look at year-end payroll processing and compliance, archiving, and starting the new year. Before we dive into the subject matter of this webinar, I would like to highlight some of the major enhancements that we've added this past year. In summary, we have listened to your feedback and placed our emphasis on improving processes. Here are some of the changes. In the employer setup area, we have a new employer setup onboarding for either a copy option or a standard wizard, which I will show you at the end of the webinar. We have redesigned the employer pay types and deduction screens. Each screen provides the same functionality with a new look and improved usability. We have added some new due diligence for risk analysis in the ACH application process for added security and lower risk. Some of the other things we've done this year is we have added, one of the major things we've done this year is we've added our employee portal app. This well-awaited enhancement has already been adopted by hundreds of employees. We have added a new funds required pane in the employer dashboard. We added 3 new client notification emails to introduce your clients to new features and programs. We have simplified the e-file and EFT process, where once your ACH application is accepted, all the services that are supported by Payroll Relief are automatically enabled. And lastly, we have now also implemented a feature where if you receive a return direct deposit transaction, that employee's pay becomes available under the check reprint so that you can print a check for the failed direct deposit. So please stay tuned as I will cover some of these at the end of the webinar in detail. So what time is it? It is year end, and in the payroll industry, we hear about this a lot during this time of the year. There's plenty of educational seminars, webinars, pre-printed material are abundant regarding year-end and its importance. So what is so important, and for who is it important? Well, perhaps the most important aspect is a document that every employer must carefully prepare and provide to its employees and the SSA, Social Security Administration, by January 31st, 2019. Every individual that works and receives compensation needs this document to file their individual tax returns. The Social Security Administration shares this document with the IRS. Yes, it's W-2 time. This webinar will focus around the correct preparation and efficient processing of W-2s using Payroll Relief. What is great news is that most of year-end work is done by Payroll Relief. What you need to worry about is collecting data you don't have and getting it into the system for the proper generation of W-2s. So let's get started. So basically, bonus and commission payrolls, fringe benefits, health insurance for 2% shareholder, third-party sick pay, cost of employer-provided health insurance, health savings account, employer matches, dependent care benefits, allocated tips. We'll talk about correction payrolls, as well as any wage adjustments. Also, year-end compliance, involves obviously W-2s and 1099 miscellaneous, verifying the information on these forms, filing them, the state W-2s for applicable states, annual reconciliations, and delivery of the documents themselves. We'll talk about the Form 940 and the great news about the FUTA credit reduction. And we'll look at the Affordable Care Act forms 1094C and 1095C, as well as archiving, which is a very important topic in this webinar. The second phase would be starting 2019 on the right track, which is accomplished by reviewing all employee and employer information. Since the most important item is the preparation and generation of Forms W-2 for employees, we have provided the following checklist, which we will cover in detail. Okay, so you want to obtain fringe benefit information, add any year-end bonuses or commissions, enter these into the payroll, do your reconciliations, which are the W-2 employee summary, Forms 941 versus W-3, quarterly forms versus annual forms. Also, employers with tipped employees may have allocated tips, W-2 Box 8, or they may have uncollected Social Security on cash tips, which is Box 12 codes A and B. You need to verify the employee information, such as Social Security numbers, addresses, and names, process, view, and print W-2s. Deliver the W-2s to the employees or release them to the Payroll Relief employee portal. File the forms with the Social Security Administration and archive the W-2s. A feature introduced last year under the firm administration are client notifications, which provide the ability for you to send blast emails to your clients. I can't say it enough how extremely useful, especially during this critical time of the year, this feature is and is used. Simply select the clients, review the number of clients to be emailed. So you select the clients, you can see that you can review, it tells you how many clients you've selected. Click on the email button, and you may create your own custom email or use one of our canned emails. The number of clients and recipients is displayed here again. Send an email to request any benefit information to be included in the W-2s. So we have one that's called Request Benefit Information for W-2s. Right here, it's one of our canned emails, and this is the body of the email, which you can read, which is pretty much what I just read in the previous slides, requesting that this information be submitted so that we can prepare their W-2s. And like I mentioned before, this year we've added 3 more canned emails. One to alert your clients about failed Social Security numbers, another to introduce your clients to the new Payroll Relief employee app, and lastly, one to introduce them to a service called Biz2Credit, which is a business funding facilitation service. Other payments that could be taxable or partially taxable and must be reported on employees' W-2s are personal use of employer vehicles, employee discounts, club memberships, group term life insurance, moving expenses, okay? And remember that moving expense reimbursements are now fully taxable except for military personnel. That's a change in the new laws. Educational assistance programs, adoption assistance, award and prizes, employee loans, jury duty pay, wages paid after death, advances and overpayments, and employer paid taxes for, like, example, when you gross up a check. Many fringe benefits are entered by adding an additional pay type. If a benefit is not listed in the pay type screen, you may add a custom pay type for it. Some of the benefits that we do have listed on the pay types are health insurance for 2% shareholder, third-party sick pay, cost of employer-provided health insurance, HSA employer match, and dependent care benefits, W-2 Box 10. There are some less frequently used W-2 Box 12 items that you need to set up as deductions. When entering these, the gross amount will increase taxable wages, and the deduction will place it in the W-2 Box 12 with the respective code. Some of them, these are the excludable moving expenses, the employer payments for the adoption assistance, which is code T on box 12, the employer contribution to an MSA, non-stock options, and so forth. Payrolls for year-end bonuses and commissions. Okay, and a quick note on these payrolls. It is not unusual for companies to process direct deposits that greatly exceed payroll amounts for which their electronic service applications have been approved at the end of the year. So we strongly recommend that you do one of the following if you have a much larger than usual direct deposit for a payroll. You can change the pay date or approve the payroll one day earlier than normal to allow 4 or 5 banking days before the pay date. You can split the payrolls using different pay dates. So use your regular payroll and then a bonus payroll so that the payroll is within your normal dollar limit. If neither of these options work or are acceptable to the employer, what you can do is they need to process the direct deposits on their normal pay date. You can wire transfer the funds to accountants who are no later than 2 p.m. Eastern Time on the banking day before the employer's pay date. You want to use additional payroll to process a correction payroll. Okay. A correction payroll, for example, is once we're in 2019, you need to go back and correct something for 2018. You can no longer run a payroll for 2018, as it says here on the screen. So you would need to do an additional payroll, which the program will allow a date in the past when you do an additional payroll. Okay. And the system will prompt you in the case where you are processing a payroll for 2019, so that you are aware of the fact that once you do this, you will not be able to process a payroll, a standard payroll with a pay date in 2018. So some fringe benefits that are entered using an additional payroll are, for example, group term life insurance over $50,000. Okay, that you can use doing a regular. You can also click on the radio button that says third-party sick pay and enter third-party sick pay. Okay. Now, for these payrolls, notice that you need to do this in the per paycheck data entry, not the worksheet itself. These pay types will not be shown on the worksheet. They'll only be shown on the per paycheck screen. Okay, and then the last radio button is fringe benefits, and that's where you would get the other types like health insurance, 2% shareholder, HSA employer contributions, and the employer paid health, which is code DD in box 12. So let's talk about entering wage adjustments. Adjustments can be made before filing any fourth quarter or annual form, or through February 28th, whichever comes first. W-2s will automatically be recalculated to reflect any adjustment. However, you should review forms to ascertain that your adjustment was correct. I'll give you an example of adjusting wages, one that comes up quite often. Let's say we hired an employee and we did not make them FUTA exempt and they were supposed to be FUTA exempt. In that case, you would need to make an adjustment to the FUTA taxable and FUTA tax wages. So, for example, here on the screen, it says FUTA taxable wages, $5,015. You would put the revised amount to 0, and then the adjustment would be $5,015, and it would generate an adjustment payroll for that, zeroing out your FUTA taxable wages. Another example is perhaps you have 2 states and you need to move some of the wages earned in one state to another state. You can make that adjustment in the screen as well. If you need to make an adjustment to a particular payroll, perhaps, because you are required to file Schedule B, you may click on the Pay Date radio button, and drop-down will be populated with the pay dates as opposed to the quarter for selection. Okay. An extremely important and industry practice reconciliation is that of reconciling your quarterly 941 forms against your Form W-3. So we have here one of my favorite slides, which is all 4 941s, And one line in particular I picked was the federal wages, line 2. And if we add those four, the total is $651,063.24. And when we look at our W-3, that number should be in box 1. And you would also reconcile the tax withheld, Social Security wages, and the first 6 boxes of the W-2, of the W-3. Sorry. Now, if the fourth quarter 941 is not available, or you're performing the reconciliation early before your last payroll, you may use the federal taxes report for the fourth quarter, which is what we're looking at here on the screen. And the first column says federal wages, and your total federal wages is at the bottom, $60,000. So Payroll Relief does the work for you. At the bottom of the W-2 employee summary report, okay, the only acceptable difference are the employer portion of the Social Security and the Medicare taxes. Okay, so we see here that at the bottom of the W-2 employee summary report, you have that reconciliation for all 6 items. It shows each quarter, it shows the total, it shows the amount on W-3, and it shows the difference. And once again, where the arrows are the only acceptable differences in this reconciliation. So very important reconciliation. Payroll Relief does it for you. You just need to review it. State W-2 and W-3s that are supported in Payroll Relief. Okay. So when you file the annual form for the respective state, the state W-2s will also be e-filed along with that annual form. Okay. So most states will have an annual reconciliation form, and most of them are electronically filed. As many of you know, Payroll Relief supports employers with tipped employees. Okay. If you have this case, the program also tracks and reports on W-2 Box 12 uncollected Social Security and uncollected Medicare on cash tips. So if you notice here at the bottom, this section, Box 12, has codes A and B. Okay. And as we mentioned before, a year-end compliance item faced by the same employers that have tipped employees are allocated tips, which is Box 8. Payroll Relief under compliance offers an option for allocated tips. So if your restaurant client is required to allocate tips, under the compliance menu, the screen allocated tips, you need to select the allocation method, whether it's hours worked, receipts, or agreement. If the IRS approved rate, if applicable, is usually 8%. And in my example, the gross receipts are $400,000. I then allocate the gross receipts to each employee. I click on Calculate, and the system calculates the allocated tips. So if we make note of the first employee, Joe's allocated tips is $2,936.25. When we look at Joe's W-2 Box 8, we should see that number in that field. Okay. So continuing on with W-2s, you want to verify employee information. Social Security numbers. Payroll Relief verifies all employee Social Security numbers with the Social Security number verification system from the Social Security Administration. We'll discuss this a little bit further. Other verifications that you need to do is the employee address, city, state, and zip. Note the W-2 exceptions report or button here at the top. Okay. You may want to look at this report for missing addresses, which are a major problem when filing certain state W-2s. This information should be gathered as part of the onboarding process. Okay. So an example that comes to mind, I know it came up a couple of times last year. If you do not have a zip code in Connecticut, the state W-2s will be rejected. It's a problem. So this report will pinpoint those issues to be addressed. Okay. Also verifying W-2 information. You may review directly on the W-2 form, or you may use the W-2 employee summary report under compliance reports. Okay. So this is the report. It has all the information that the W-2 has. The numbers in parentheses are the box numbers on the W-2. Or a third option is that you can use a customizable employee listing report on the reports for employee. If you do not wish to have amounts, then you may use this customizable employee listing report, and it will look something like this, based on the fields that I selected to be on the report, so that you can give it to somebody in the office to verify Social Security number and addresses, which are critical, again, to the filing of W-2s. But wait, do you really want to do this yourself, take this task on yourself or your staff? Or do you really want the employers to do it? Well, here's another example where you can use the batch client notification email feature to have your clients help you verify W-2 information. Okay, there is a canned email, it says verify employee listing report data, and you can send this to all your clients, and it will have the report attached, and then they can review the information themselves. Back to the Social Security Administration and the SSN verification. W-2s filed with invalid Social Security numbers are subject to review by the Social Security Administration and the IRS, and the employer may receive a notice or penalty in most cases. Okay. When e-filing state W-2s, it creates problems and or rejections. This is why we should always verify Social Security numbers. Okay. Recently, there was a bulletin put out by the Social Security Administration that beginning March 2019, employers will start getting notices. Prior to that, third-party payroll processors were getting notices, but starting March of 2019, employers will be getting notices from the Social Security Administration of employees that have mismatched names or Social Security numbers in the W-2s. Okay, and they are hinting to bringing back penalties if those discrepancies are not corrected. So that's something to really watch out going forward. And then here again, it's email notification time. Okay, to make it easier for you to follow up on these, we have a new canned email for invalid and missing Social Security numbers. You select the clients from the list, click on email, and you have your emails. Okay, and this is what the email looks like. Dear the employer name, we're in the process of preparing your payroll forms, and these are the employees that have invalid Social Security numbers. So again, as you're witnessing again and again throughout this presentation, the batch client notification feature is just simply awesome. Extremely useful and efficient to communicate with your clients pertinent matters at this time of the year. So we need to understand when the W-2s and the 1099s are generated and saved in the system. Okay, and that happens, you really don't need to do anything but go to the compliance form W-2 screen. Okay, and when you do that for the first time, you would get a pop-up that says your forms W-2 have been calculated. A couple of important dates. Okay, January 31st, as we all know, W-2s are due to the employees. They're also due to the Social Security Administration. 1099 miscellaneous due to recipients with Box 7, non-employee compensation, are also due on January 31st. And the 1095-C is due to the employees. February 28th are your Affordable Care Act forms if you're paper filing, and if you are electronically filing, you have up until April 1st usually March 31st, but that falls on a Sunday, April 1st to e-file your 1094 and 1095Cs. Okay. Now, Payroll Relief has updated, well, one thing first before we go to that. Just keep in mind that there is a 30-day extension for filing W-2s. However, be warned that employers must file Form 8809, application for extension of time to file informational returns, and that is available in Payroll Relief in the W-2 form screen. And you need to be approved by the IRS. And approval this year will only be given in very specific situations, for example, natural disasters. Many states have followed this due date change to their annual reconciliation forms and the W-2 copies. Only 3 states remain that still use the February 28th due date, and they happen to be Hawaii, New Jersey, and New Mexico. Other than that, all have adopted the January 31st. And keep in mind, some states are very tricky. One example that comes to mind is Maine. The annual reconciliation form is due February 28th, but the W-2s are due January 31st. So to make things simpler, in Payroll Relief, they're due January 31st because the W-2s go with the annual reconciliation form. And again, Payroll Relief has updated the program with all these new due dates. Everything is already done for you. All you have to do is enter the additional information to be reported on the W-2s. And keep in mind that late filing of W-2s, there are penalties and they are pretty stiff. Okay, the slide that you're looking at now, okay, is a table, is applicable to small businesses. This is directly from the IRS website. Unfortunately, it has not been updated for 2018 W-2s, but the penalties, which are current now, are also stated on pages 13 and 14 of the W-2 instructions. Okay, but if you look at the screen, it's $50 per form W-2 if you're filing within 30 days of the due date. Okay, and the maximum is $191,000 for small businesses. That's the new number. Last year was $187,500, so that number did go up. The next stage would be if you're filing more than 30 days after the due date, but before August 1st. The maximum penalty is $545,000 for, so that's $500,000 for a small employer because it's $100 per W-2. So as you can see, these are pretty stiff penalties, and you definitely do not want to be late filing your W-2s. Delivering the W-2s to the employee. Employees may consent to electronic delivery in the employee portal. That jump? No. Okay, so this is the employee portal. On the form, there's a tab, Forms W-2, where they can go in and look and print their W-2. In the employee portal profile page, you will notice that there is a consent to electronically deliver W-2s. They need to read the content of the pop-up, check the box that says, I consent to receive my W-2s, and then you will not have to give them paper W-2s. Processing W-2s and filing them. Okay. Select Form W-3 at the bottom of the screen and click the action button at the top right. Okay. When filed, you will see that the file date will pop in the copy A. Okay, the date field filed displays with copy A. And that's pretty much it. So it's a piece of cake, right? Well, here it is done per employer basis. So you have to go to every single employer and do the same process. Okay, so if you have 50 or 100 or more employers, that could be quite a tedious task. Well, why not batch process your W-2s and 1099s? Okay, with Payroll Relief W-2 batch processing, you can do all these actions at the top right of the screen. You can print the W-2s. We even support pressure sealed. You can email the W-2s. You can release the W-2s to the employee portal in batch, and you can e-file the W-2s. You can archive the W-2s. Okay, so everything in one screen. Simply select the clients by checking the box in the grid at the far right. Okay, and if you notice, the first column says PWD and has a check mark. That is for clients that have established a password in the employer preferences screen, and only those employers will be emailed if you choose the email option. Okay, so for security reasons, if they're password protected, then you may email them. If they don't have that checkbox, they will not go in the email batch. Keep in mind that due to the file size restrictions, the total selected W-2s per batch may have to be limited. Okay, for example, if you have like 300 clients, we recommend that you do batches of 100 employers at a time. Nonetheless, you can still process in multiple batches, all from one screen. Here again, we see the power of Payroll Relief, all your W-2 processing in batch, in one screen. The action items are logically laid out for you. You view and print, you email or release to the employee portal, you e-file, you archive, you're done. So again, that left to right logic that we use in our menus as well as here in the action items for the buttons. Okay, and very important, archiving W-2s. The Form 1099 miscellaneous work in the same exact manner as the W-2s. Here also, in the per employer, you go to the 1099 screen under compliance. You have the print 1096, and at the very bottom, in lieu of the W-3, you have the FD 1096 form, which you will select and then take the action item in the upper right-hand corner. And also the batch processing of 1099s, same thing, very similar to W-2s. You can print them, you can email them, you can release them, and you can e-file them all from one screen. Okay, one slide on Form 940. It's a very popular and somewhat complicated annual form. It should be reviewed carefully, okay, because due to the credit allowed for unemployment taxes paid to the states, you need to, one, ensure that all state unemployment payments have been recorded, and two, that all applicable state unemployment forms have been filed. Okay. This will ensure that the proper credit is calculated. Line 10 has a worksheet in the instructions. Should this be applicable, an amount on line 10, the program will print the worksheet along with the Form 940 so that you can see how the system came up with that number. But basically, the 940 is the last thing that needs to be done. So even when you're auto e-filing the forms, the system will auto e-file all the state forms first and leave the 940 for last. One quick note, very good news this year. I'm sure most of us are happy to hear that there is no states with the applicable with the FUTA credit reduction. The only one is the Virgin Islands, which the Payroll Relief program does not support. So we don't need to worry this year, as we have done in the last, 4 or 5 years, with the FUTA credit reduction, the states, how it's handled, how it's paid. That's worry-free this year. So that's good news. Let's talk about full-time equivalents. Okay, there is a report in Payroll Relief that you can run for your full-time equivalents. The report can be run for the last month, last quarter, last year, year to date, or for a specific range of dates. Now, if you enter a specific dates, please know that it starts with the first day of the month and ends with the last day of the month. So even if you put January 10th through February 9th, it's going to go from January 1st to February 28th. Okay, and basically what the report does is it takes the total service hours per employee, limited or adjusted to 120 hours per month, divided by the total number of months in which service hours reached 120 hours. Okay, the printed report looks something like this. Okay, so we have all the employees and the columns for the appropriate amounts, and then at the bottom it does tell you full-time equivalent equals total adjusted hours divided by 120 times 12 months. In this particular example, it's 6.47, and it's rounded up to the nearest whole, which is 7. Okay, so it's not using the 6.5 up or down. It's just if it's 6 point something, it's going to 7 regardless. And it explains what each one of the column headings are: service hours, adjusted hours, full-time months, and part-time months. Another year-end item, Affordable Care Act. Payroll Relief does support the Form 1094C and 1095C. So keep in mind, any data that's available in the program will automatically flow to these forms. However, due to the nature of the information being collected and reported, mostly HR, you will need to enter much of the information. This screen provides entry for the required information on the 1094C. Provided in Payroll Relief resources under links is an IRS link to the Affordable Care Act tax provisions for the employer directly to the IRS, so it is current. And currently, Payroll Relief does not support self-insured employers and Forms 1094B and 1095B. The second screen provides entry for the required information on the 1095C for each employee. This is also a default. There is also a default code for all employees. For your convenience, links to the documents with code descriptions are provided at the top, right here where the arrows are. So if you click on these links, it will give you a list of the codes if you have alternating codes through the months, or if you want to just use the default for all, you can use it in the upper left-hand corner. Okay. And also remember that you can give client permissions for these forms. So this way the client can perform the data entry and you can just print and review the forms. Okay, so now we come to the last topic, okay, which is archiving your data. Okay, and this is the last topic and as far as closing 2018. And one of the utmost importance, because I can't say it enough, I can't tell you how many times we have customers call us and tell us, you know, I need a form from 2012, or I need a report from 2015, okay, and it's not available through Payroll Relief any longer. Okay, this is why we emphasize and reiterate over and over again the importance of archiving your data. And whether it's to the cloud or to the desktop, okay, it is imperative that you archive. Within each key area of Payroll Relief, the program offers the ability to archive data, either automatically, like with the payroll set report, and manually, like with the payroll checks. Okay. In compliance, you may archive tax forms, you can archive the W-2s, and you can also archive individual reports, as well as, like I just said, the report sets. Now, the payroll report set is automatically archived to Cloud Cabinet or to the archive data when you print the checks, and the reason for that is because we assume that you want the reports archived with the check numbers, not without the check numbers. So it's done when you print the actual checks. Understanding how important this archival function is, Payroll Relief now comes with an archive data tool. right here in the icons in the upper right-hand corner. Okay, we want to help you archive. This new archive feature automatically archives your payroll report set with every approved payroll when the checks are printed, like I just mentioned, and you may also manually archive checks, quarterly forms, and additional reports. If for any reason you choose to archive from the tax form screen directly on a per client basis, you do have the ability. Just select the period, select status all, and you will have the archive button available to you so that you can archive all the forms. Keep in mind, the forms must have been recorded as filed, either paper or electronically filed. Or better yet, you may archive quarterly forms for all or a selected group of your clients in batch. Okay, another time-saving feature. Just select the clients, click archive, and it archives all of them automatically. Same with reports. Should you have a third custom report set that is not automatically archived, simply archive from the report screen. And not necessarily just with report sets, it also works with any report that you want to archive. You'll have the archive availability so that it gets copied. Okay, this is the report. This is the payroll set report. It comes with default values. However, you can edit it to include or exclude any particular reports that you may want or not want. There are two other reports which can be exported to Excel for further editing and which we highly recommend that you manually archive. Okay, the first one is the ACH transactions report, which should be done at least annually. Okay, this report lists all the ACH transactions for the year and provides an excellent resource for all electronic payments. Okay, yes, there's queries and sorting abilities at the top of the screen, but when it comes to year end, I just want to go January 1st to December 31st, give me everything, and just export it to Excel. If that's good enough, that's fine. If I need to do some editing, I could do it in Excel and keep it outside of the system as an archived report. The second is the payroll register export, which is found under payroll processing. So for those of you that want to keep your client's payroll data, this export will provide this information. Export to Excel and manipulate data at will, then archive. Okay, so basically what we're looking at here on the screen is a grid with all the columns in the payroll register. Okay, and at the bottom, you do have options to include or not include any pay type details or any deduction details. Export that to Excel, and you have your client's data in Excel. Okay, so we closed out 2018. So what's next? Well, we're ready to start 2019. And for employers, we want to review tax information, contact information. Pay schedules may have changed. 401k options may have changed. As far as the employees and contractors, same thing. We may have taxes that have been changed, any deductions and garnishments, or some employees and contractors may have become inactive. So as we transition into the new year, okay, these are some of the items that you need to consider carefully. When you process your first payroll of 2019, that is the first payroll with a pay date in 2019, the following occurs. Okay, if you have any deductions or garnishments with goal amounts, okay, the logic in the system says if the goal amount has not been met, it will adjust that amount for the new year. If the goal amount has been met, then it marks the deduction inactive. Paid time off. if the rollover is on a calendar year basis. Okay, there will be an adjustment if necessary based on the maximum carryover. An accrual, if the accrual period is per year, the system will accrue the PTO provided that the period end date must be in 2019. Okay, so keep that in mind. I could run a payroll with a pay date in 2019, but the period is all in 2018. It will not accrue PTO. Okay, the period end date has to be in 2019. That's as close as we can get as far as accruals and deferrals for accounting purposes. Okay, so very important. These things do take place when you run the first payroll, and you need to be aware of them. In the example of the goal, let's say I had a goal of 1,000, I only paid 600 year to date in 2018. The system will automatically change that goal amount in the deduction setup to 400, so that it only considers that for the new year. Employer setup information. Okay, you need to verify and update any tax information. Very important. Federal and state tax payment frequencies. We'll talk about this in a few minutes. SUTA rates. Okay, there's an asterisk. There's a reason why. Federal form to file for withholding taxes. Okay, some employers may have become 944 filers or vice versa. They were 944s. Now the IRS wants them filing a 941. Verify contact information, name, email, phone. Maybe the contact person that the employer changed. Pay schedules, again, they could change. 401k options, the employer match may change for 401k. So these are things that you need to consider when starting the new year. Why was there an asterisk in SUTA? Because here again, our batch client notification email feature comes in handy. You can send all your clients our canned email requesting SUTA rates for the new year. Okay. After you have reviewed all setup information going forward in 2019, you may batch email yet another canned email asking clients to verify employer profile report data. Okay, so there's two canned emails at this point that you can use in the client notifications. One, to request SUTA rates, and two, once you've gone through the entire employer setup, send the employer profile report so that the employer can review it and agree that it's everything good to go. Okay. I have pointed out the available canned emails. However, keep in mind that you may also add unlimited custom emails for anything that you need. A newsletter, holiday greetings, whatever information that you need to pass along to the clients, payroll related, you can create a custom email and send it from the client notification batch email. Another very important and critical item, and some of you may be saying, yes, 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 we know about this, but I'm saying yes, yes, yes. Every year we hear about cases where employers are getting notices that their tax payments were late. In most cases, they're getting penalties. And when we dig in and find out what happened, it's because they didn't change their tax deposit frequency. Okay, so this is a very important compliance item. Federal tax deposit frequency also applies to states. And for that purpose, in Payroll Relief, under Manage Compliance Reports, there is a screen available for Federal Lookback Screen. Okay, there are 7 different screens, but for the purposes of this webinar, I'm only going to concentrate on the last tab, which is your Federal Lookback. Okay, for every employer, there are columns for each quarter of the lookback period. So for 2019, the look-back period is July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2018 if you're 941. If you're a 943 or 944 annual filer, the look-back period is the entire year of 2017. Okay, now we'll look at let's look at the top 3 employers in this particular case. Okay, the very first one has a total liability of $413,000, yet their current frequency is monthly. Okay, so that's a flag right there. It needs to be changed to semi-weekly. The second employer is just under the $50,000 threshold, so monthly is good. And again, the third one is way out of whack, shouldn't be quarterly. It's way above the 2,500 that's required for quarterly, so that also should be changed to semi-weekly. Okay, so again, very important. Please use this report on screen, and you can also export it to Excel to review your tax payment frequencies, and also keep in mind that the states also need to be reviewed. So you need to now review employee information for 2019. Same thing here, okay? You need to review and update any tax information. Is there any new W-4s? Keep in mind that with the new law changes, employees that were claiming federal exemption must submit a new W-4 to you. But again, there is new W-4, so most employees, once they do their tax returns in 2019, may be filing a new W-4, so keep that in mind. Any exempt status, whether it's changed, they're no longer exempt from FUTA, or they are, you need to go over that. Verify your deductions and garnishments, again, your goal amounts, and whether the deduction is still active or inactive. Okay, and it doesn't necessarily mean the program takes care of the ones with the goal amounts, but there could be other deductions that just happen to not be active or, any longer. And verify paid time off. Look at the new accrual. Look at the adjustments and make any adjustments if necessary. And again, remember that the PTO accrual in the new year for the period end date must be in 2019. So to help you with the W-4, if in employer preferences screen, you check the box for the ability for employees and contractors with access to the employee portal to upload their W-4 and I-9 or W-9. You can, they will have the ability when they go into the employee portal, if you notice in the bottom right-hand corner, update documents, and they can upload the W-4 and or the I-9. Okay, staff members may also upload these documents from the employee setup screen if they wish to do so. And coming soon will be the ability to upload the direct deposit authorization form as well. Okay, so these are things that the employee can do through the employee portal. You want to review contractor information. Same thing is similar to employees, whether there's federal withholding for the contractor or not, whether they're subject to workers' comp. Do you want to review the W-9 date? You want to verify the compensation if it has changed, and you want to verify any deductions and garnishments for contractors. Okay, just a reminder that coming next, right after we wrap up, the year end is our enhancements. So I just wanted to pop this screen in there to remind you to hang in there for the good things. So wrap up. What have we talked about? We talked about reporting of fringe benefits, year-end adjustments, procedural year-end compliance, W-2 and 1099 miscellaneous, delivery of W-2s and 1099s via the employee portal, batch processing of W-2s and 1099s, Form 940, and no FUTA credit reduction for this year. The very, very important topic of archiving data and reviewing and verifying your 2019 setup information, both for the employer and the employee. I highly recommend that under resources, supporting documents, there is a year-end planning guide that summarizes some of the key points that I have mentioned in this webinar. So you have the 2018 Payroll Relief year-end guide. Okay, so it's time for those enhancements. One of the most frequent enhancement suggestions or feedbacks that we have received from our customers has been the ability to onboard new clients in a fast and efficient manner. Okay, so we have answered this with two functions that we believe you will find very helpful. Okay, and they are the setup wizard and the copy feature. Both are found under the employer contact screen. So we all know that when we sign up a client to Payroll Relief, the very first screen that the system defaults to is the employer contact screen. This is where you will find these two features. The setup wizard may be completed by your client, and the copy is copying from an employer function. So when I click on copy, okay, I get this pop-up window that allows me to select an existing client code or name and copy from that client the pay schedules, the pay types, the deductions, PTO policy, general ledger accounts, and permissions. Okay. Now, an example of this. Again, and the keyword the keyword here would be that it's an existing client in the same or similar industry. So I may have already an existing restaurant that I'm doing payroll for. I just picked up a brand new restaurant. Restaurants pretty much have the same pay types. They pretty much have the same deductions. So I'm going to check those boxes. The pay schedules, you know, they could be similar. We do not bring over the dates of the actual pay schedule because that could be different. But we do bring the type of the pay schedule, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, semi-monthly, monthly, and so forth. And then you just click on copy, and everything from that existing client will be copied over to your new client, saving you data entry time to create the new client. Okay, the Setup Wizard is a tool that you may email to your new client. They, not you, complete the form with basic payroll information, and you just complete the setup after they're done. So again, in the employer contact screen, you click on the Setup Wizard button, you will have the option to email the form to your client. Okay, and what we're looking at here is the first page of the form that the client will get, but I'm going to click on Send Email, and this is what the email looks like. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to process your company's payroll. To get started, we need some basic information, and then there's a link to click on the Setup Wizard. When they click on that link, provided they have client access, they will be prompted with 6 screens for data entry. And those screens are your pay types, so they'll check the box and enter the dates. Okay, click on Next. They would set up their tax information, so their federal EIN, if they know it, what type of filer they are, whether they're 941, 943, 944, state ID, the frequency for both the federal and the state, and the unemployment rate. Things that the employer should have. The third screen is your applicable pay types and deductions. Okay, so we use the most common ones just for the form. They can check the box or uncheck it. The pay types already come pre-selected, the first 4. They can uncheck them if they don't want them. And the deductions, they can check whatever they want and set up the criteria. Then the next screen is the departments. If they have departments, they can indicate the department name. And again, this is very simple. The user, all they're doing is they're going through these forms online, clicking the next button, or if they need to go back, they can click the back button. And they're going through through these 6 screens. The next screen is the PTO policy. So they can indicate what kind of PTO it is, not necessarily the accrual amounts, but how they roll over and how they accrue the PTO per employee. And then the last screen is the business information for electronic fund transfers. We're not asking for bank information here because it's confidential, but some of the preliminary items that you do need to enable e-services, such as the business website, the type of business, the products and services, your average direct deposit, the years in business, and so forth. And then once, notice that at the top right, now the last button is Save. So now they're done completing the setup. They click on Save, and they get this screen that says, Client details are saved successfully. Thank you for providing the setup information. Now, when you go into the client, all this information will already be set up for you, and you would just need to continue with the setup. So again, these are 2 very useful, I think, features to onboard clients in a much faster and efficient way. One of the other enhancements that we had which has been very well taken, is the funds required panel in the employer dashboard. Typically, dynamically provides information, if you notice, for direct deposit, child support, and tax funds that are required within the next 3 weeks or 21 days with a convenient total by day. So we see here that this employer has December 19th, December 20th, January 3rd, and 9th. It has direct deposits, $500 for January 3rd. It has child support of $55 on January 3rd as well. And it has a lot of taxes due on the various dates that will be debited. And then it has the total amount of funds required by date that I need to have in the bank because they're going to be debited. We are looking into enhancing this further and improving it based on some of the feedback that we have received. And last but not least is the employee app that we have that some of you have been using. Again, many employees already jumped on board. It's pretty much the employee portal on a mobile app like your phone. You can view your profile, you can view your pay stubs, W-2 forms, upload, again, the documents that I mentioned, the W-4, I-9, so you can take a picture of the form right from your phone and upload it. And you can also view the uploaded forms, as well as you can view the pay stubs for the employer. Just a reminder that registration for Payroll Relief training webinars are posted on my portal page. And on behalf of all of us here at Accountants World, we want to wish you best wishes for a happy and prosperous new year. Thank you for attending. My colleague Roger has been taking your questions throughout the webinar and answering them. At this point, we will begin our question and answer session for any other questions that have not been addressed. And again, thank you very much for attending.
Thank you, Carlos. I tried to hit as many as I could. There's a few questions coming in now. I remember one question somebody asked. They wanted to know how can they do the state e-filing for their particular state, but I think it would probably apply for with regard to W-2s, that is. And that question is general. It can probably apply to many other states, right? So do we e-file the state W-2 copies that go to the state, or are they manually printed and sent in?
No, they're electronically filed as long as they're on that chart that I showed you during the webinar, and it's also available in the year-end planning guide.
Okay. Cool. There was a question about the filing date for 1099s. It was extended out to March, right, or March 2019?
No.
Not January. Maybe the slide. It wasn't.
No, the 1099 miscellaneous with Box 7 non-employee compensation is due January 31st. All other 1099s are due February 28th.
Okay. Debbie was questioning that. So, Debbie, if you're still there, I don't know. There's your answer.
Okay, there's a question here from Heather about if we look at the W-2 employee summary report, it's not showing the first 3 quarters. That's because either you have prior payrolls and the forms were not generated in Payroll Relief, or the forms have not been marked as filed, either paper or e-filed. Those are the only 2 reasons why you would show it would show no amounts in the first 3 quarters. I mean, obviously the third one is kind of obvious. You didn't have any payrolls, but based on your question, it seems like you did have payrolls. I think it's just a matter of whether there were prior payrolls and the form wasn't done in Payroll Relief, or the form was not recorded in Payroll Relief. Okay, Debbie had a question about the custom emails. I believe that there's a code for the email, so that tells me that you can save it. We would have to look into that again, because you're saying that wasn't possible before. So the fact that you create a code when you do a custom email, unless the code is just for our canned emails, I'll have to get back to you on that.
Debbie wanted to know when W-2s are going to be available for filing.
January 1st. I'm trying to get them open for the next update release, which is scheduled for December 26th. If we do, we will make an announcement, because technically you can e-file them now. But in the past, we've always opened them up on January 31st. But again, this year we have given consideration, and we might open it up on December 26th with the update release. Just watch those announcements. Very important at this time of the year. We put a lot of notifications in the notifications announcements area of Payroll Relief. There's a question about the canned report for employee verification. I believe I showed you the email. The email just basically says the name of the employee. So basically it says we're preparing your W-2s, and the following employees we found have mismatched or name EIN or Social Security numbers and Social Security mismatch, and it gives the employee names. They really don't need access. I mean, if they have access, that's great. They can go in and correct it themselves, or just the fact that they're aware of it, they can call you and let you know and what the correction is, and you can make it if they do not have client access.
Oh, someone asked can you archive all the checks for the whole year? The answer to that is no, right?
No, you would have to. The idea is that you're archiving them by payroll as you go along.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Heather also pointed out the same thing with the W-2 employee summary report. And it says here, if I go down to the bottom, the reconciliation detail, it is not showing the first quarters. We have entered the payroll as prior payroll, but was using another system. We converted to Payroll Relief in August, September of 2018. If we converted during 2018, can we use the reconciliation to W-2s? We did not prepare the quarterly reports during the first 2 quarters. And the answer to that is no. And the reason that it's no is because that reconciliation is not reading the payroll data, okay? Because the purpose of the reconciliation is to reconcile Form 941s with the W-3. So the system is looking for a Form 941 data to put in that column, and that's the reason why it's not showing. So yeah, it's a common question, and unfortunately, if you have prior payrolls, that the reconciliation, you're going to have to try to get those numbers from another. I'll do it on an Excel spreadsheet because it's again, the program's not adding up. Even though you entered prior payrolls and you can say, okay, you can take the numbers from there, it's not. It's programmed to take the numbers from the actual 941 form. Somebody asked, what is my portal page? My portal page is the page that you get when you log into your accountant's office online.
Carlos, is someone that's talking about a failure of an employee in his Social Security number verification system, and they're saying that they can only enter the initial, or we only allowing to enter the initial of the person's middle name. This person's got a full name on their card, on their Social Security registration. More than one character, more than an initial. Is that correct?
That's the first I hear of it.
Yeah.
I have a middle initial, and I don't have that problem. My Social Security card has my full middle name spelled out, and in the system, it's only my middle initial, and I've not been, that I know of, rejected. So it should be acceptable. I mean, if that's something that has changed, then we need to know about it, because then in that case, we would need to allow full middle name.
Yeah, because he's saying her middle name is listed on the card, but you only allow for a middle initial. How do we correct it? Yeah.
Like I said, I mean, from my own personal experience, my middle name is listed on my card, and it's not in the system.
Okay, Carlo, there's your answer. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that have middle names, so it would be a big issue, I think. Okay, the question here from Kyle, can we process 1099s with information in boxes other than box 7? Example, rent, no. We do have a program called After the Fact Payroll, which is more of a compliance program, and that does support other boxes. But because Payroll Relief is strictly a live payroll program, it only supports non-employee compensation and box 4, federal withholding. Candy, we do not process the ACA reports. That's something that the program provides you the ability to enter the information and print the forms, and you, as the payroll provider, would distribute them to the employer, who would then distribute them to the employees. So your question, when do you process the ACA reports? We don't. Question, how do we change the reporting agent from accountant's world to firm? Basically, you just submit a new 8655 and it will be changed to the firm.
And make sure you enter your reporting agent information in Payroll Relief.
Very good point. You read my mind there, Roger. Very good question from Jennifer Brown, and I forgot to cover it. Is there a notification to the client or us that an employee has updated their W-4? Yes, there is. There's a indicator in the employee list, and there's also an indicator in the employee taxes screen. You will see that there's an indicator there that would alert you to the fact that they have uploaded a new W-4. Caitlin has posed a very good question regarding the wizard. It is fairly new. I don't believe that there is any report, but you do bring up a good point. I need to follow up on that and make sure that I believe that if there's a change log, if you're familiar with the employer changes report, it should be logged in there as the client making the change or creating the entry, but not for everything. So that's something that could be an enhancement down the line. What else we have? Okay, unfortunately Heather left, but if anyone else is there concerned about the state e-filing of W-2s, with the state e-filing, when you go through the process of e-filing the W-2s to the Social Security, is that when they go to the state? No. The answer is no. They go to the state when you actually do the state annual reconciliation form. Totally separate from the W-2s to the Social Security Administration.
Diane, you asked in there what date do we have W-2s reconciled before Payroll Relief auto e-files. We do not auto e-file W-2s. You can batch process them, but you must initiate it. So you're the one that would verify the accuracy of those W-2s before you push them out to the government or give them to the employees. And that date to the government is January 31st now, right?
Yes. There's a question here. How do you fix employee Social Security number if the system alerted wrong information entered, even though we entered the correct Social Security number per Social Security card? Okay. I mean, what comes to mind right away is that perhaps the employee is presenting you the old card. Maybe their name changed. Maybe they got married and they haven't gotten their new card, although they filed for one already. Or in other cases, all we're doing is reporting what the Social Security Administration is telling us. So at that point, we recommend that you contact directly the Social Security verification system and say, listen, my payroll provider is telling me that they submitted this for verification. You're throwing it back as invalid. Can you tell me why? And then the matter would be cleared up.
Angela, the full-time equivalence report is utilized for the ACA reporting.
Are 940 taxes going to be paid? I have a new client that started mid-year, but I don't see when and if it will be paid. There should be a pending payment for 940, but when you file the form, it will update any pending payments. So if the pending payment you're seeing is lower than what you're expecting, once you access the 940 form and it recalculates the entire form with for the entire year, and it comes up with a balance due. Once you record that file as either filed manually or e-file, it will update the pending payment and process that payment accordingly. But yes, it will be paid. We do understand that even though you start in the middle of the year, that your FUTA could be paid at the end of the year if you didn't hit over 500.
And the other thing too, if you did make any payments on the 940 throughout the year, just make sure you record them as manual payments accordingly to make sure that 940 gets readjusted, because otherwise it, be including payroll. Relief's going to calculate the 940 all over again if that's a brand new employer that you're setting in.
If the Social Security invalid, you can still submit the W-2s, but like I mentioned in the webinar, and like the Social Security Administration released a press release earlier this year, is that they are going to start looking at this more diligently and sending out notices that these Social Security numbers need to be corrected, and if not, they're implying that they may reinstitute, because back in the 80s, I believe, there were penalties for bad Social Security numbers on W-2s. I wasn't asking about mismatched Social Security. I was just asking on verifying employee information like addresses. Julie. What was Julie's question? Okay, I'm seeing these questions come up a little bit from other people that are the same question about Social Security number, that they match the card, but they're getting verification failed. Again, it could be that they're using an old card, or that they changed their name, or in the worst case scenario, you would have to call the verification system. But we send it through the verification system, and all we're saying is, what they're saying is that it's a mismatch. What else we have here? Abraham brings up a good point about the middle initial issue that we discussed with the Social Security. That some people have two last names. I believe the Social Security has rules for that, and I believe that you put the two last names belong in the last name field, not use the first initial, the first last name, and the middle initial. And sounds confusing, but basically, if it's two last names, they both belong in the last name field.
There's a question there saying that if it's still invalid social, the system shows an invalid, but they verified it's correct. I mean, it still boils back to going back to the government. I mean, it's the government who's indicating the information is wrong. I would imagine that the employee has to go in and make sure that the information that the government has is correct. Correct? Right, Carlos?
Yes.
I mean, we can't contact the government on your behalf and say, well, that looks right. I mean, we have no idea. Whatever you enter in Payroll Relief is what we submit to the government, and the Social Security number verification system verifies it and says good or not good. And that's all we know, and we're just reporting back to you what the government says.
There's a question about how to access archive reports, and again, since archiving is a very, very big topic here, there's two ways. I mean, if you own our Cloud Cabinet application, then it's in your Cloud Cabinet. If you do not own your Cloud Cabinet application, as I mentioned in the webinar, we are trying to help you archive. There is a archive tool that is available in the icons that are in the far upper right hand of the program. There's like a little cloud. If you point to it with your mouse, you'll get a tip that it's the archive tool. If you click on that, it will take you to a limited version of the Cloud Cabinet. But that's how you access any archive data. All right. Do you see anything else, Roger?
No, Miriam, you cannot e-file. We do not e-file the 1094, 1095Cs through Payroll Relief. You can only print them.
Okay, some of these questions, I believe, I guess they haven't had a chance to attend the implementation webinar, because how do you load previous quarter payroll information so it shows up on the W-2. That's pretty much prior payrolls, and that's entered through our payroll processing. If you already processed a live payroll, the prior payroll option is no longer available. Therefore, you have to use the additional payroll, which is the only other payroll type that would allow you a pay date in the past. But there is a prior payroll option to enter any information that you've done in another system. Okay, Tyler, I apologize. You mentioned that your question wasn't addressed. It probably wasn't addressed because it's not a year-end topic. I know it's a new topic that just came out, and it's very, very new, so there's really still details that are being worked out. But as far as the when it's going to be released, our target is to be released sometime in January, if not the end of this year. But that is not definite yet. And as the email indicated, there will be another announcement or another email when it's about to be released, with the verification through Yardley, as opposed to validation of the bank account. That's a whole different topic. You can call our customer support service desk, but again, it's too new really that we don't really have a lot of the answers yet because it's still in development. So whatever was in the email is what we know, and again, it's being developed, and as more gets solidified, then we will address it. That's the best answer I can give you. I'm sorry about that. And just to add to that, Tyler, we have gotten feedback, from you and from other customers. So I can guarantee you that feedback is being taken into consideration as we develop the change. So, all right. So we've had 30 minutes of Q&A. So I hope we have addressed all your questions. Roger, do you see anything pertinent that we should point out before we sign off?
Wrap up.
I don't see anything. Yeah.
Why are my unemployment taxes not pre-funding? If we do not pay the tax, Miriam, we only pre-fund what we're capable of paying electronically.
Electronic. Yeah.
And if we can't pay it electronically, then we won't pre-fund it. Okay.
Right, and obviously your ACH application has to be accepted. You have to be, working with e-services, and you have to have the pre-funding option turned on in the e-services preferences screen. So again, thank you very much for attending. We apologize for the technical difficulties we had with the slides at the beginning. There will be a recorded version of this that you can listen to, or you have your staff listen to. I definitely encourage that if they missed the webinar, because there is important information, as well as the the year-end guide. And our help desk is here also available to answer your questions. Keep in mind, though, that January is very, very heavy on support. So this webinar is definitely important to attend, and reading the help and the documents available to you are also a big help, to get your answers. Thank you again. Happy New Year, and much success to you in the new year.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Roger.